All right, bookish besties, it's time to strap in. We have another deep dive for you guys today, and we are deep diving into Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. We're going to be uncovering all the hidden details you might have missed on your first read, maybe your second read, but either way, we're going to dive in. Get ready, grab your beverage of choice, get comfy. Let's do it. Here we are, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. This is the prequel to The Hunger Games. It takes place 64 years before the events of the first book. It explores the 10th Hunger Games, which is a lot less structured and a lot more brutal. It also highlights a rebuilding capital after the events of the Dark Days, which is when the districts rebelled against the capital. The story follows Coriolanus Snow, who is 18 years old in this book, a student at the academy. We see Snow, who is from a once prestigious family, struggle with poverty and hunger himself. We also meet Lucy Gray Baird, who is the District 12 tribute for the Hunger Games. She is a singer, a performer with the Covey, who is a traveling troupe of performers. Now, that is the pre-spoiler part of this video. After this, we are diving into the spoilers. So if you haven't read Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, consider this your warning. We're gonna keep going. Coriolanus is assigned to Lucy Gray Baird. Seeing an opportunity to gain favor and wealth, he devises strategies to make her popular with the capital audience, including singing during her interview, which captivates everyone. Coriolanus then thinks to himself, how can I use this to my advantage? The 10th Hunger Games are particularly harsh. These tributes are released into a dilapidated arena without food, water, or weapons. Coriolanus uses his cunning to help Lucy Gray survive, including smuggling in a compact with rat poison and sending her food and water. Throughout the games, Coriolanus witnesses and partakes in capital manipulation for political gain. Both Dr. Gall, who is the head game maker, and Dean Highbottom, who oversees Snow at the academy, have very complicated relationships with him and really take a hand in influencing his decisions and his moral compass. Lucy Gray uses her charm, her wits, and her style to not only influence Coriolanus to help her, but to outlast her opponents. After the game, Snow is caught cheating and he is sent to District 12 as a peacekeeper to help him stay out of sight after some suspicions arrives. In District 12, Coriolanus reconnects with Lucy Gray, but he also uncovers secrets about a potential rebellion. Him and Lucy Gray's relationship really start to deteriorate when Coriolanus' control and propaganda lead to betrayal, including the death of Sejanus Plinth, his friend from the capital, and the implication that he might have tried to kill Lucy Gray himself. The novel ends very ambiguously. Coriolanus returns to the capital, now fully embracing his path to power, manipulation, and control, really setting the stage for his later transformation into President Snow that we see in the Hunger Games. Lucy Gray's fate remains uncertain, with implications that she might have escaped or died in the wilderness. We will never know. She continues to haunt the narrative to this day. Okay, I've teased the details enough. Let's dive into it, start to bottom. They're unhinged. They're kind of crazy. And they're all on my computer here. Because you know that I was reading that book and I was a little gremlin typing in my thoughts. We see from the very beginning when Lucy Gray's name was pulled for the Hunger Games, confirmed the Hunger Games can be rigged. Tributes can be rigged. The capital can have a huge sway in who gets chosen for the games and who doesn't. And there's this huge ongoing theme we see throughout the entire series of the capital versus the districts. The districts being seen as less than, as animalistic. But it's very interesting to see that as you go down in the districts, the view of the districts themselves are lower and lower and lower. And that's why District 12 is at the bottom. It's farthest away, but it's also seen at the bottom of this as this totem pole. And they really pin the districts against each other with this idea that as long as the districts are pointing fingers at each other, they're not going to point the fingers at the capital. Because what happens When the district points fingers at the capital, rebellion. The capital loses control. They can control the districts if they're fighting against each other. It's when they form an alliance together that they overpower the capital. There is a moment in the books where Snow and one of his classmates, Clemencia, are supposed to work on a project together. A whole bunch of stuff ensues at the zoo, and it turns out Snow completes the project on his own. Clemencia then goes to Dr. Gall and tries to take credit. Where does that lead? A very dangerous snake bite that then kind of transforms Clemencia into this snake-like being. And we see for the very first time Snow's distrust of the capital, because he wonders who's going to take care of him if they're not taking care of the kids. This moment with Clemencia is a very huge turning point for Snow and has a lot of potential to reveal the truth of the capital. Snow just doesn't take that thought all the way through. And it's interesting to see, truly, following up on that Clemencia thought, how brutal this book is. And it's not just the tributes who this brutality happens to, but gosh darn, it's the capital kids too. They are really getting the hard end of the stick here. It's also really interesting to see the star-crossed lovers parallel with Katniss and Peeta in Hunger Games and Cornelius and Lucy Gray. Because with Katniss and Peeta, the dynamic is pretty equal. They're both tributes, and their star-crossed fate is that one of them has to die, or both of them might die in the games. Versus Coriolanus and Lucy Gray is a mentor-tribute relationship. So from the get-go, their relationship is based on control. Snow sees him as having power and influence and control over Lucy Gray, that Lucy Gray is his. He constantly says, she's mine, as if he owns her and he's entitled to her. That is where their star-crossed relationship stems from. So they've never been equals like Katniss and Peeta. There's always been a tier of superiority there, which I'm still team Lucy might have not had feelings for him. She was playing the game. That girl is a flirt. She's smart. She's a charmer. She was turning it on for Corio. There is a lot of imagery to a circus, putting the tribute kids in cages like circus animals. And we see this done a lot of times throughout this book. There's when they're in the zoo, but more specifically, the time I'm referencing here is the funeral, which, keep in mind, there's a lot of funerals for capital kids in this book that Corio actually sings at, which is kind of wild. And I think a really fun parallel that he's on stage performing and singing the capital anthem, the anthem of Panem. And then you have Lucy Gray, who's singing the songs that she wrote and performing the songs that she wrote. It's a very interesting dynamic here. But the tribute kids are caged and paraded through town like circus animals. And again, this is not the first time we see them being paraded like this. And it's all, again, very juxtaposed, that it's at a funeral where they are going to kill the kids in the tributes. They're going to kill the tributes, but they're also mourning the loss of another child's life. It's so interesting when you break down and think about it that way. Another, circling back to the districts are animalistic, they're in cages, they're being paraded throughout town. They have vets, veterinarians. They did not send these tributes, these children, to real doctors. They sent them to vets to get looked after. If that is not symbolic, after everything we've seen the tributes in a zoo, we've seen them in cages, paraded like circus animals, and now they're being sent to vets. Suzanne Collins is painting a picture here for us of truly how the capital sees the districts and its animals. It wasn't clear enough. It's staring at us in the face. It's also interesting to note that the very first time that Coriolanus even sees Lucy Gray as an actual person is after the bombing. After the bombing happens, where Lucy Gray saves his life. That's a very important detail, because it's in that moment that Corio essentially owes her a life debt. And that conversation that they have before she goes into the games is the first time they talk about strategy. That's really the first time that Coriolanus sees her not just as a person, but as a contender in these games. And that is actually Lucy's wish, is like, first off, believe that I can win this thing. And that is kind of what flips Corio's brain of like, oh shoot, maybe she can. And let's get real, she has a great shot at it, because here are the stats for going into that arena. We started with 24 tributes. 8 tributes died before going into that arena. 8. Plus, not including 6 capital kids. That is 14 children's deaths around the 10th games before the games even started. Absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. Something that I did really love about the books, that it really showed the relationship of the first mentor with the first tribute, is that when the tributes went on stage for their interviews, the mentors went with them. It really played on this dynamic of capital and other, capital and district, and tried to build that tie, and I guess like make you care about, or like say make the capital citizens care about the tribute by associating them with someone with the capital. I just thought it was a really unique dynamic, and it kind of would have been cool to see that played, a continued strategy where a face that the capital knows and loves, along with like Caesar Flickerman, came and helped on stage for that interview. Thought it'd be cool, but I love to see the dynamic here. And I just love envisioning Snow like pouting in the back of Lucy Gray's love song, just like, this isn't about me. She had a lover before me. How dare she have a life before me? So funny. Gold. It is gold, honestly. Also, let it be known that Coriolanus only gave Lucy an empty compact and hinted at her to fill it with rat poison. He never actually explicitly told her what to do. She was smart enough to put 2 and 2 together. Further, he kissed her in front of everybody. Everybody was there. He just like planted one on her. Wild. I forgot about that reading the books because I was so used to the movie scene in my head where like a quiet, intimate moment. No, that was in front of everybody. And like, keep in mind, she hadn't showered. I just wonder what the smells are. I know it's so gross. I'm just like wondering in my head, like, I wonder what she smelled like. I wonder what he smelled like. He's kind of poor, but like, she hadn't brushed her teeth. Granted, she hadn't eaten. She didn't smell good. I'm sorry, I'm being mean. I'm being too realistic. There's also a circumstance in the alley that Festus kind of picks fun at Snow for, saying that he's a playboy, and I would just like to know more about that. Because what is it talking about? It's referenced. It's just like said and like passing. But like, I want to, no, Susie C, let's circle back. What do you mean? What? How is Corio a playboy? But like Tom Blythe, I get it. The casting here in this movie was dangerous. So we're going back to that reoccurring theme of capital versus district, because that just, in a nutshell, that is truly such a reoccurring theme of just pitting people against each other based on like where they're from, essentially, thinking one is better than the other. And it's interesting to see that that is how Corio explains Lucy Gray and gets the audience to like her, is because he explains that she's not really district, she's Covey. Covey's not district, she's basically part of the capital. And by comparing her to the capital, discrediting that she's part district was a strategy to get the capital to like her. And further, Dean Highbottom himself came out and openly spoke against the games in an interview during the interviews. And he said, and I quote, "There's no difference in these kids. Capital kids just have been fed with better clothes and dental care." Going back to the whole, she didn't brush her teeth and she probably smells bad for that kiss. But Dean Highbottom gets it. This is the point. This is the point that Suzanne Collins is trying to get you guys to understand, get us readers to understand, get the freaking capital to understand. There's no different. The kids are kids, just with worse clothes and no dental care. As I mentioned before, Clemencia had that snake bite and it kind of turned her a little bit reptilian, a little bit sneaky snake-like. And she does come back in the book. We see her healed. We see her back in action. And all it reminds me of is that scene in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when all the kids come marching out after they had whatever procedure is done. You have the Blueberry Girl who's been juiced out. You have Mike TV who's been stretched out. That is what this reminds me of. High key. Another thing that's really interesting about the book is that there were no cameras in the underground of the arena. And because we were seeing everything from Corio's point of view, we had to imagine what Lucy Gray was up to underground. We did not know as readers, which is very construed with the movie, where the movie's like, oh, there's subway systems, we can attach the cameras. No, like, we did not know. Corio did not know. He had to guess based on a little bit of pieces there, which drove his insanity because he could not control the situation. He didn't have control. He didn't know what was going on. He couldn't even see what was going on to try to have control, because he could have sent her sponsor gifts if he knew where she was, what she needed. He could try to anticipate that, but he didn't know. He didn't have control. Snow had so much judgment for District 2's tradition of sprinkling bread on a body to like help it go into the afterlife. But I cannot help but think that Katniss would have the exact same reaction. She would be, why are you wasting this perfectly good bread? There's people starving in District 12. Same reaction. She would also be upset. Dr. Gall talks a little bit about her start and how she kind of got started as like head game maker and scientist. She started delivering babies. And Corio makes a note, just being like, imagine that face being the first thing that you see when you pop out into this world. And I think it goes back to Gall always wanting to control life. And not just control it, but create new life. I think her delivering babies is such a key insight to her as a being, because when she's delivering babies, like, you are in control of that. You're starting a new life. You're bringing that life to the surface. And I think that is so much into her story and her back character. There's a big point in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes about rabies. Rabies was a huge problem in the Dark Days, and there's a note about a dog that's saliva and has rabies. And rabies happens in the games. And it's very important because the kids who have rabies are bit in the capital. And it's a very important plot point. It shows you that the capital isn't perfect. It isn't this perfectly clean entity that's, has no flaws like they want you to believe. There's evil, there's uncleanliness, there's badness in it. And they try to blame the rabies on, they brought it in from the districts. No, boo-boo. It was here the entire time. The ending of the 10th games with Lucy Gray poisoning Reaper is so iconic because it really emphasizes this whole Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, because she used Snow's poison, literally the weapon of choice that Snow later uses in his life to do the deed, because Snow is a snake. He's constantly referred to it. He is a snake in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and here he's making the songbird use poison. It's so symbolic. All right, now we're gonna have Corio go into the districts, and I love and hate this part of the book. I think it's a very low-key ending, but there's so much character development that happens here. And let's start with the roommate, Smiley, Bug, and Beanpole, who are all district. And I think that's such an important note, is that peacekeepers are district. Peacekeeping is like a good life for people of district. You kind of want to get into peacekeeping. It's a guaranteed job with a guaranteed salary and guaranteed meals. You are well fed and well paid for, and you can send that money back home to your family. This is a well sought out job no matter what district it's in. And Smiley, Bug, and Beanpole are brothers. Corio kind of sees them as brothers too, and for a moment, he's able to lower the wall of capital and less than, because now he's a peacekeeper. He doesn't think he's gonna go back to the capital. He's like, this is my life now, and these are my brothers. Corio has always hated mockingjays. It would actually his idea to go through and use the mockingjays as target practice. And I think that's such an important note here, that it was his idea to go and eliminate the mockingjays. And it's such great foreshadowing to his hatred of Katniss and the rebellion and the mockingjay and all it represents. Because once again, what does the mockingjay represent? But the capital's inferiority of control. It proves that the capital can't control everything. And the capital might not be as great as it seems. I know we talk about Lucy Gray haunting the narrative, but guys, the meadow haunts the narrative all the way from the coveys. Like, it is insane how one setting can have so much meaning to so many characters through so many generations. Wild. Another aspect that haunts the narrative that we all know and love is Lucy Gray riding the hanging tree about a hanging that Snow was at, but also using it as a ploy to invite him to run away together, and then Katniss taking that song, flipping it 65 years later as a narrative against him. Stunning, beautiful. Give me 20 more. Give me 20 more. Lucy Gray is haunting this narrative, man. I love it. Also, imagine that the guy you were using to survive follows you across the country. Like, giving me a little bit of the ick. Just a little bit of the ick, a little bit of the clingy. We did not DTR what this relationship was. Or are you following me? It's supposed to be a plot twist at the end of the book when we see what Dean Highbottom really thinks about the games. But if you're paying attention throughout the novel, there's signs. And one of them I already talked about was his quote about the capital kids are just the same thing as the tributes. But another one is where he actually apologizes to Lucy Gray. He gives her money. He apologizes for the games and the treatments that she went through during the games. And that truly is like where you see his true colors coming out. Corio's, his inner monologue, anytime Lucy performs, anytime she sings, is so comedically funny. And I'm saying this in the way of it's so selfish and it's so manipulative. It's wild to me. Like, it's wild of how he can get jealous and he feels controlling and like she's mine and just like doesn't understand it. Like, when she's singing the Ballad of Lucy Gray, his entire mind is just like, this is boring. This doesn't make any sense. Like, what do you mean? And it's, dude has no, I would say media literacy, but what even is listening to a song? Is that considered media literacy? I don't know. He has nothing. No wheels are turning up here. He's not taken an English class once in his life. He's never had to analyze poetry and analyze things like obviously we are right now. So here's a very interesting question that Ballad and Songbirds and Snakes proposes. And it goes back to nature versus nurture. Was Snow created to be the monster that he was, or was he always meant to be that monster? And while I think it is a balance of both, I think a lot of it is nurture. I think he had a lot of that hate in his heart. I think that there were opportunities. We saw the opportunities where he like kind of questioned, was like, is this the right way to go? But Dr. Gall, from the get-go, was in control of the situation. She was controlling Coriolanus. She was manipulating him because she wanted him as her successor and as her pupil. While he thinks that he's in control and influencing the narrative, it's actually Dr. Gall. So I think she was nurturing him, and that all kind of comes to show at the very end of the book when it turns out she sent him to District 12. She wanted him to see what that outlier districts was like and what that life was like. She wanted him to get the real human experience. She was controlling the narrative the entire time. It's just wild to see the guy who likes control being controlled and being, thus creating the monster, the snake that we see in him today. Keep in mind, again, foreshadowing, as the pets that Dr. Gall had in the very beginning of the book were snakes. And what was her whole point that she wanted Snow to learn? And it was this idea that humans are innately evil beings. We're innately violent, and we have to have the Hunger Games to what? Control the people. Control that inherent violent nature. But I still have this belief that it's the circumstances that turn us violent. It's our fight and our flight, and you fight when you have to fight, when the world creates the circumstances, the world that you live in, and you have to fight to survive. But if that wasn't a part in a play, that wouldn't be a thing. I see where Dr. Gall's getting, and I think that there's still a point of like, there are some inherently evil people out there, some inherently bad people, but that's not everyone. But what someone is capable of when they're pushed to their very extreme limits, it's a lot. And you can find yourself doing things that you never thought that you were even capable of doing. It's really interesting to see how at the end of this book, Corio uses his dad's compass to get himself back home, and his mom's compress totally gone. So by the end of the book, it kind of symbolizes how he's really fully transformed into his dad, into his father figure, and has completely left the love and nurturing of his mom. He's left that behind to step into his dad, which he knows to be cruel. His dad was cruel his entire life. He gravitated more to his mom. So it's interesting to see by the end, he is fully transformed into his dad. Also, it's not talked about enough how Snow was the one who proposed the idea for the victor's village. He wanted to show that wealth and that the reward for winning to make a victor want to win. He introduced more money, feeding the district for, the year that the winner is from that district, and the victor's village to show off that wealth. Another form of control for the games and another way to manipulate the players of the games. And I'm still not over Snow becoming the heir to the plinth fortune. Like that hurts like nothing else, because what do you mean that you are the root cause of the son's death and then you're just going to step in and waltz in and take essentially that son's place? Like it hurts, but the ending quote of this book is just chef's kiss, wonderful foreshadowing that I will so thank Suzanne Collins for. Her and her mockingjays would never harm me again. Absolute cinema. Absolute cinema. Susie C., you slayed with that line, because what did they do? What did those mockingjays do 65 years later? But they came for you, Snow. So, great ending, great foreshadowing. Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was such a brutal read. Reading the brutality of the districts, I think up to this point, Ballad was probably the most brutal of the original trilogy, considering this is still considered YA. Wild. I remember when they first announced it was going to be a movie, I literally thought, how can you turn this into a movie and keep it true to the source material, because it truly is so brutal and heartbreaking with the kids. But they did a great job. Video on that to compare the book to movie adaptation, what they did right and how it changed the narrative. I have other deep dives for all the Hunger Games books, so Hunger Games, Catching Fire, Mockingjay, plus Sunrise on the Reaping. Go back and watch those videos. Stay tuned for my Sunrise video. I have a lot of other Sunrise videos too that you can deep dive. I haven't done like my full deep dive just yet. She's on the radar. She's coming. Is there anything else about Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes that you want to talk about? Let me know in the comments below. Any other details that I might have missed, I might have skipped over, and how this book relates and translates into the other books. I did not include any spoilers for Sunrise on the Reaping, so if you want spoilers on Sunrise on the Reaping, drop it down below. I try to keep that one a little bit separate from this video. But please, guys, comment like I said, subscribe to the channel for more deep dive analysis, hidden things and details you might have missed. I also do other reviews and just a bunch of other chaotic topics, if I'm being quite honest, because this is my channel and I make the rules. Like this video, subscribe, join the family, join the fun, and most of all, guys, happy reading.